Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of information and really try to unearth the most important nuggets of knowledge. Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating: the hidden language of nonverbal communication. I mean, what if I told you that every single day, people are basically broadcasting their true thoughts and feelings? And most of us are just completely missing the signal. It really is all in the details.
It's a bit like searching for street signs in a new city, right? You might be looking way up at poles, but sometimes they're actually painted on these little 6-inch stone blocks down at ground level. Once you know what to look for, and importantly, where, well, those subtle details become incredibly obvious. And that's really our mission today, to equip you with the tools to spot those tiny, those minute, yet incredibly honest details that our bodies are constantly revealing.
And we're drawing from some incredible insights here from an FBI expert, actually. Someone who literally made a career out of being, well, a human lie detector. He'll show us how paying attention to the most minute nonverbal cues, these tiny details, can reveal some powerful truth. Remember that story? The FBI agent who pinpointed a murderer. Not through some big interrogation, but just by observing a simple, involuntary eyelid flicker. It happened right when a specific detail about the murder weapon was mentioned. That's the kind of precise detail we're talking about today.
Oh yeah, that story is a perfect example. It shows how small, seemingly insignificant behaviors can carry immense weight. And these aren't just hunches or guesswork we're talking about. The information, the details we'll be discussing are based on scientific facts, field-tested findings, not just speculation. We'll learn to observe like an expert, really focusing on the critical role our ancient limbic brain plays in giving off these genuine, unfiltered signals, often through the tiniest details.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The source material explains that we actually have, sort of, 3 brains within our skull: the reptilian, the limbic, and the neocortex. But when it comes to nonverbal communication, one of them is truly the star of the show, isn't it?
Absolutely. What's truly fascinating here is the limbic system. It's often called the mammalian brain, or sometimes even the honest brain. See, unlike our thinking part, the neocortex, which can consciously, deceive, the limbic brain reacts. It reacts reflexively, instantaneously to the world around us. These reactions happen without conscious thought, and that makes the resulting nonverbal behaviors incredibly genuine and therefore highly valuable for observation. The details are pure.
Right. So if someone is stressed or feeling some intense emotion, their limbic brain is going to kind of leak that information, often completely against their will. We see this in the famous freeze, flight, or fight response, don't we?
Yes, and it raises an important question. Why do we often freeze first? It's actually our oldest defense mechanism. It's deeply hardwired. Think about opossums playing dead, or those chilling accounts from, critical incidents where students instinctively just held perfectly still. This freeze response, the deer in the headlights effect, it can be really subtle too. You might see shoplifters kind of hunching over, or that turtle effect where the shoulders rise up protectively towards the ears. These are tiny details, but they're so revealing.
Okay, so freeze first, then comes flight and fight. But even flight has surprisingly nuanced details, right? It's not always just running away.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, distancing behaviors are key. You can observe it everywhere, like a child turning away from food they dislike, or an adult leaning away slightly during an uncomfortable conversation, even just placing objects like a purse or maybe a coffee cup on their lap. It can be the limbic brain's subtle way of saying, I need some distance here. These subtle physical shifts, these details, provide genuine insights into someone's true feelings, often without them even realizing the precise signal they're sending out.
And this focus on honest, involuntary leakage, that leads us straight into pacifying behaviors, doesn't it? Those little things we do to soothe ourselves when we're stressed out.
Oh, pacifying behaviors are absolutely critical details to watch for. They're often these involuntary self-soothers. They can range from the really obvious, like a child sucking their thumb, to much more discreet adult versions. Things like chewing gum, maybe biting pencils. A prime example is neck touching or stroking, especially the suprasternal notch, that little indent right at the base of your throat. You often see this in women when they're feeling distressed or insecure. The source actually recounts the story of an FBI agent who knew a fugitive's mother was lying because her hand just kept going to her neck every single time the son's presence was mentioned. The higher the stress, the more noticeable these facial and neck pacifiers become. We also see things like, rubbing cheeks, exhaling with puffed cheeks, fiddling with a tie, or even a kind of self-administered body hug, like crossing your arms tightly. These seemingly small details are revealing a person's current state of mind with, frankly, uncanny accuracy. So the key insight here, really, is that when people are stressed, their limbic brain often forces these involuntary self-soothing gestures, and that makes them incredibly reliable details of inner discomfort.
You know, it's interesting. When we think of body language, our minds usually jump to the face, maybe the hands, but our sources point to the feet and legs being surprisingly honest. What makes them such reliable indicators? Why are those details so important?
Well, they're just far less consciously controlled than the upper body, much harder to fake. Consider happy feet. That little wiggling or bouncing motion some people do. It's a high confidence tell. It's a signal that someone is getting what they want or feels really good about a situation. You can sometimes even spot it just by watching the person's shirt or maybe their shoulders for little vibrations above the table. The source material shares this great anecdote about a job candidate whose feet were just bouncing excitedly when talking about an overseas assignment. Then they stopped dead, completely still, when Mumbai was mentioned as the specific destination. Her feet totally gave away her true feelings long before her words did. It's those minute shifts, those details, that reveal so much.
Okay, so feet tell us about happiness. But what about underlying intent or maybe preferences? Can the details tell us that too?
Absolutely. The direction a person's feet point can be incredibly telling. It's a subtle detail, but powerful. Like if you approach two people talking and their feet, along with their torsos, genuinely turn to include you, that's a welcome. But if only their hips kind of swivel and their feet stay pointed away, well, that's a pretty clear signal they'd rather be left alone. Jurors, for instance, will often turn their feet towards the exit if they dislike a witness they're listening to. It's this physical desire to just disengage from something negative. Even things like gravity-defying behaviors, rocking on the balls of your feet or walking with a real bounce in your step, those are usually honest indicators of positive feelings. You rarely see those details in someone suffering from depression, for example.
And what about the core of the body, the torso? It seems like it's always trying to guard something important.
Well, it is. The torso houses our vital organs, so the brain diligently protects it. We tend to lean away, even slightly, from things or people we dislike. And conversely, we lean towards what we favor. This includes something called ventral denial, where we subconsciously turn our vulnerable front side away from something disagreeable, or ventral fronting, where we're comfortable and openly facing whatever we favor. The source gives examples like couples physically pulling apart as their relationship wanes, or students unconsciously leaning forward towards a favorite teacher. These subtle shifts in body angle, these little details, even just a few degrees, they speak volumes. What really becomes clear from observing the lower body is this. Your feet and legs, because they're the least consciously controlled, often betray true feelings and intentions long before any words are spoken. You need to pay attention to where they point and how they move for some really undeniable clues, undeniable details.
It sounds like the torso can also kind of act as a shield sometimes, right? Using objects.
Yes, exactly. Using your arms or even objects like a pillow or a briefcase to create a barrier, that's a strong signal of discomfort or feeling threatened. There's an example of a young man clutching a pillow during an FBI interview. He only let it go when they were discussing completely neutral topics. It perfectly illustrates this unconscious protective behavior. Even clothing choice, you could call it torso embellishment, acts as a kind of billboard for our sentiments, doesn't it? Advertising status or allegiances. And finally, the simple shoulder shrug. A full, high shrug usually indicates confidence or certainty, but a partial shrug, or that weak shoulder display, the turtle effect again, where shoulders rise towards the ears that signals insecurity and discomfort. These are all subtle details the observant eye can definitely pick up on.
Now, our arms. We've seen they're powerful communicators. What are some of the surprising details they reveal about our inner state?
Well, the arms are fundamentally designed for survival, so they're incredibly honest transmitters of emotion. We see these gravity-related movements all the time, like free, joyful arm swings when someone's happy, feeling light, or the opposite, sinking, drooping arms when negative motions are kind of pulling us down. And this happens in real time, often just in moments. Yeah. Think of athletes raising their arms in triumph. That's a universal, gravity-defying display of joy. It's an immediate detail.
Okay, but what if the arms are not moving freely? What does that signal, if they're held tight or still?
Then we look for arm withdrawal, or maybe restriction of arm movement. Consider a mother maybe crossing her arms tightly when her child is playing a bit too roughly nearby. Or, more seriously, an abused child who instinctively limits their arm movements to try and avoid attracting negative attention. The source material highlights how observant adults can sometimes spot signs of neglect just by looking for these subtle restraints, these limiting details, or even specific bruising patterns on the arms. Similarly, shoplifters often use fewer, more restricted arm movements. Ironically, this attempt to be inconspicuous can actually make them stand out even more to someone who knows what detail to look for.
And beyond just protection, arms also seem to mark territory, don't they? Or assert dominance in some way.
Oh, definitely. This is where the details become quite fascinating. Think about arms akimbo, hands on hips, elbows pointing out. That's a powerful display of dominance and authority. You often see it in police officers or military personnel, a very clear signal, I'm in charge. Or there's the hooding effect, where someone leans back, maybe interlaces their hands behind their head, almost like a cobra flaring its hood. It signals, I am comfortable and in charge here. And the individual who spreads their arms wide over multiple chairs in a meeting, they're claiming territory, radiating confidence. These are often unconscious signals, these details of status and power.
So much going on with the arms. But what about the hands? They seem to have their own very nuanced language, just packed full of subtle details.
The hands are absolutely crucial for decoding nonverbals. Their fine motor movements reflect very subtle nuances happening in the brain. I mean, even just their appearance can tell a story, can't it? Like the smooth hands of someone pampered versus the scarred, calloused hands of someone who works outdoors. When it comes to communication itself, open hands, palms visible, tend to enhance credibility. Hidden hands, conversely, often detract from it. The source discusses how, famous orators throughout history, even controversial figures, meticulously practice specific hand gestures to enthrall their audiences. It really illustrates their persuasive power. It's truly a testament to the power of getting the details right.
And even something as simple as a handshake can be a goldmine of detail, can't it?
Oh yes, from a firm, confident grip to a limp, maybe dead fish handshake, these details can signal comfort or discomfort, confidence or insecurity, almost instantly. Interestingly, the source also points out important cultural differences, like hand-holding between men is common and signifies friendship in some parts of the world. It emphasizes the importance of understanding the context of these gestures, these details, rather than just rushing to judgment based on our own norms.
Yeah, context is key. Now, we've all seen obviously offensive hand gestures, but what about more subtle ones that maybe get misinterpreted or missed?
Well, finger pointing, for example, is pretty much universally seen as negative or aggressive. Even in a courtroom setting, studies show mock jurors prefer an open hand gesture from a prosecutor over a pointed finger. Even subtle preening behaviors, like picking imaginary lint off clothing, can indicate intimacy if directed towards another person. Or it can signal disrespect if done distractedly while someone else is talking. These seemingly small details carry significant social weight.
What about that old myth about sweaty palms? Is that really a reliable indicator of lying, or is it just nervousness?
This is important. One thing that becomes really clear from the source material is that sweaty palms are not a reliable indicator of lying. Not at all. They simply indicate stress or limbic arousal, which could be caused by something as simple as meeting someone new, public speaking anxiety, or even a genetic condition like hyperhidrosis. So you really have to be careful not to misinterpret that specific detail. It's a very common mistake people make.
Okay, so sweaty palms are out for lie detection. But other hand behaviors can signal nervousness, right, in different ways.
Absolutely. Uncontrollable quivering or trembling, especially noticeable when someone's holding an object like a pencil or maybe a cigarette, that's a strong indicator of high stress or anxiety. The source recalls an espionage case where a suspect's cigarette was visibly jittery, and it pointed towards a specific name on a list that triggered his fear, ultimately leading to a confession. The key, again, is to look for a change from their normal baseline behavior. That change is the critical detail. And when it comes to confidence, steepling, where you bring your fingertips together, is a very powerful display, often seen with bosses, politicians. Contrast that with keeping your thumbs tucked into your pockets, which clearly indicates lower status or insecurity. Even a gesture like genital framing in men, where their hands might rest near or draw attention to that area, is often a subtle subconscious display of dominance. It's like an instinctual way of asserting status. And also the sudden stillness of frozen hands when someone usually gestures. That abrupt change can also be a significant tell, a noteworthy detail.
Wow. It really sounds like our hands offer this incredibly nuanced language. What are some of the most striking ways they speak our true state of mind through all these details?
A person's hands literally speak their true state of mind through all these small, often consistent details from their overall movement, or lack thereof, right down to their specific, fleeting gestures.
Okay, let's move up to the face. It's often called the mind's canvas, isn't it? Capable of, what, over 10,000 different expressions? But our sources also caution that it's the part of the body we're best at using to deceive. That feels like a contradiction.
It is a bit of a paradox, and this is precisely where observing the details and actively looking for mixed signals becomes crucial. Well, yes, universal expressions like genuine happiness or anger are pretty clear. We learn from a very early age to lie with our faces, often for social harmony. So we really need to compare facial cues with other nonverbal behaviors happening elsewhere in the body. For example, subtle details like jaw tightening, maybe slight nose flaring or squinting. These can all indicate underlying negative emotions or tension, even if the person is trying to smile. The source describes a husband who said he was pleased his kids had found jobs, but his jaw was clenched tight and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. A less than generous smile, you might say. Those little details clearly revealed his true negative feelings. It's in those tiny discrepancies, those conflicting details, that the truth often leaks out.
What about the eyes? Supposedly the windows of the soul. Are they truly as honest as we tend to believe? Are the details reliable?
They're highly honest, actually, mainly due to the minimal conscious control we have over them. Details like pupil constriction, the pupils getting smaller when we see or think about something we dislike, or squinting when confronted with something unsettling, like maybe a confusing clause in a contract. Those are involuntary tells. And eye blocking, like the eyelids closing for a moment longer than a normal blink when hearing bad news, or even hands coming up to cover the eyes, that's an ancient limbic survival mechanism. It's about blocking out negativity. Even children born blind will instinctively cover their eyes when they hear bad news. These small, often fleeting eye behaviors, these micro details, are powerful indicators of concern or dislike.
And we also need to pay close attention to things like eye gaze and blink rate, don't we? Those details matter too.
Definitely. A direct gaze can signal many things: interest, attraction, love, or even threat, depending on the context. But looking away during a conversation, that's often just a comfort display. It can actually allow for clearer thinking, believe it or not. It's not necessarily a sign of disinterest or deception, which is a common misinterpretation. Changes in blink rate, however, are significant details. Going from a normal rate to very rapid blinking often indicates arousal, trouble, or nervousness, famously seen in President Nixon or Clinton during times of intense stress. Similarly, a subtle eyelid flutter can indicate that someone is struggling with the information they're hearing or processing. These are all subtle details that help paint a precise picture of someone's inner state.
And the lips, they seem to have plenty of their own revealing details too, things like disappearing or pursing.
Oh, absolutely. Think of disappearing lips, or lip compression, where the lips subconsciously tighten and seem to almost vanish when someone's under stress. This is a highly reliable cue. Even if it doesn't automatically mean deception, it signals deep distress or discomfort. It's a very strong negative detail. The lip purse is another telling detail. You see this when someone presses their lips together firmly, almost like they're holding something back. It often signals disagreement, or that the person is actively considering an alternative thought. You see this everywhere, from business negotiations to police interviews. And then there's the sneer, that quick asymmetrical raising of one side of the upper lip. It's a fleeting but powerful display of contempt or disrespect. So potent, some studies suggest it can even predict relationship breakups. Even subtle tongue displays, like a quick tongue jut out from between the teeth, that can sometimes indicate, I got away with something, or maybe, oops, I did something foolish. Little slips, little details.
So given all these incredibly subtle facial signals, these tiny details, what does this all mean for accurately interpreting what we see on someone's face?
The key takeaway is this. If you are confronted with mixed signals from the face, for example, you see a smile, but it's paired with a tightened jaw or squinting eyes, you should almost always side with the negative emotion. That immediate, unfiltered negative detail is usually the most accurate indicator of a person's true feelings before they have time to consciously mask it. The honest detail tends to come out first, even if it's fleeting.
Okay, now for the million-dollar question, the one everyone wants to know. Can these details, all this observation, actually help us detect deception? Our source material seems to say, proceed with caution.
Right, and that's a crucial point to really internalize. Detecting deception is incredibly difficult. Study after study shows most people, even trained professionals, are frankly no better than a coin toss at it. There is no single behavior, no single Pinocchio effect detail that definitively indicates a lie. The behaviors often mistaken for deception, like fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, maybe sweating, are actually just signs of stress or nervousness. And innocent people get nervous when questioned too. We learn to lie from a very young age, sometimes just for social survival, to avoid hurting feelings or getting in trouble. So the details we observe must be put into careful context.
Okay, so if there's no single tell, no magic bullet detail, what do we look for then? What are the precise details that actually matter when trying to assess truthfulness?
Well, when we put this all in context, it's really about looking for clusters of nonverbal behaviors, not just one thing in isolation. It's also about looking for significant deviations from a person's normal baseline behavior. How do they act when they're relaxed versus when they're discussing something sensitive? And critically, look for a lack of synchrony. Asynchrony is when the words and the body language just don't match up. They contradict each other. Like if someone forcefully says no, but their head gives a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, yes, that's asynchrony. It often looks and feels contrived because the conscious thought is trying to override the underlying limbic truth. Liars also often have delayed or somehow unnatural emphasis in their gestures. They might seem out of sync with their words. The source shares a great anecdote about a woman who gave hours and hours of seemingly credible, fabricated details about a crime. But her overall demeanor was strangely subdued, her movements very restrained compared to how you'd expect a victim to react. Those were the key details that ultimately revealed her deception.
Interesting. So it sounds like observing how the details are presented, the overall pattern, is just as important, maybe even more important than any single detail itself.
Exactly. Look for details like, say, white knuckles gripping the armrests of a chair. That's a sign of very high stress. It's often seen in someone who is about to deceive, although, again, it's not definitive proof on its own. Or look for a sudden dramatic shift in posture, maybe from an expansive, confident pose to a withdrawn, almost fetal position when a tough question is asked. Even subtle barrier building, like unconsciously stacking soda cans, papers, or books between themselves and an interviewer, can be a subtle but telling detail, indicating discomfort or an attempt to create distance, possibly related to dishonesty.
What about those classic moments in movies, where someone's being grilled and their voice cracks or they suddenly clear their throat a lot? Are those reliable signs, reliable details?
Again, those are primarily details indicating stress, not necessarily deception. I mean, I've seen very honest people exhibit exactly those behaviors simply because they were extremely nervous about being questioned or being in a formal setting. The key technique the source emphasizes is to ask, pause, and observe. Don't just machine gun questions at someone. Give the person time to process and respond, and then watch very carefully for the precise moment a nonverbal detail, a shift, a gesture, a microexpression surfaces in direct response to a specific question. It's about timing your observation of the details, linking the stimulus to the response.
So after digging into all of this, what does this deep dive into the world of nonverbal details ultimately mean for us, for reading people more accurately?
Well, it means that while no single detail can definitively prove deception, really understanding the underlying limbic responses, recognizing clusters of behavior, noting those deviations from a person's baseline, and doing all of that within the proper context, it significantly enhances our ability to read people more effectively. The truth, in this silent language, is often revealed not necessarily in the volume of words someone uses, but in the verification found within the subtle, consistent, and sometimes contradictory details their body provides.
Wow. Today, we've taken a really deep dive into the fascinating and incredibly detailed world of nonverbal communication. We've talked about everything from the surprising honesty of our feet to the potentially deceptive capabilities of our faces and that whole subtle dance of comfort and discomfort played out in every single interaction. It truly is all about paying attention to the details.
Yeah, just like finding those street signs down low in Coral Gables, Florida, instead of up high on poles. The nonverbal signs, the details, they've always been there.
Yeah.
It's really just about knowing what specific details to look for and where to look for them. It's about developing the habit of paying attention to the often missed subtle details that the human body is constantly broadcasting.
And this isn't just some trick for catching someone in a lie, is it? It's much more than that. It's about genuinely enriching your interpersonal relationships, understanding your friends, family, and colleagues on a much deeper level, and just navigating the world with greater awareness simply by observing these nuanced details.
Exactly. You now possess some powerful knowledge, some powerful tools that allow you to perceive the full, rich tapestry of human experience much more clearly. Seeing both the spoken language and the silent language, it's almost like unlocking a kind of secret code for human behavior, all through the careful observation of detail.
So the next time you're in a conversation, maybe just ask yourself, What subtle detail is this person's body revealing right now that their words might be trying to hide, or maybe just aren't fully expressing?